Hello, I'm Minga Claggett-Borne from Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm part of New England Yearly Meeting, and I am so amazed to be among you today. I never thought this would happen. So join with me as we explore, how do Quakers respond in times of crisis? This is part of the theme that we all are struggling with, because the United States, or occupied Turtle Island, has been in crisis for years, if not centuries. But also, along with that, for thousands of generations, there has been a great tapestry that is being woven amongst this times of crisis. The Spirit is weaving a majestic tapestry, especially during crisis. So I want to lift up a couple of threads showing how Quakers respond, because Quakers have a very unique thread as part of the world's weaving. You and I are a part of this weaving. We're part of the great mystery, or the Holy One, Yahweh, the creation. The first thread I'm going to talk about is, what are we doing in this pandemic? And the second are one story of the encounter I've had with evil as a Quaker. And it's going to be looking at one of the biggest evils is how do we face this wall at our southern border? Let me start with some recent journal writings. March 25th, 2020. Every day is a new reality of how others are suffering while my body rolled up safe in a cocoon. We're being asked to voluntarily shelter in place, which includes more spiritual discipline than quarantining. Quakers aren't good at following imposed rules. March 29th. I'm sheltering at home. No parks are open. All public areas are closed. So I run by the Quinnipiac River. I can't physically be with people, but I give thanks for birds flying, for song, for the calling between the animals. Animals have more habitat space now that humans have receded into their dens. Forcing myself inside, I appreciate new joys. I can learn new things, read. I love watching leaping squirrels, when at one point they were very annoying to me. I watch trees dialogue with the sky. And there's so much gratefulness. So I thank you, Divine One. April 1st. I fight loudly with my spouse about how to help each other when one of us might get sick. I'm angry, I'm afraid. So after these riotous words, I calm down, I apologize. I want Jonathan to change, but deep inside, I'm afraid to change. The fear of COVID is real, but I won't act out of that fear. I listen to heartbeats. I breathe. I limit my diet of the news. No Trump tirades, hardly any NPR. I focus on breath. So join me as you focus also in your own space on your breath, because we're all beginning new habits, new mantras. So I roll my shoulders back. I adjust my backbone. I take snippets from my yoga practice. Long back, heart open to the sun, hands that sweep the sky. This is my new litany. So, April 3rd, I can isolate myself physically from humans for 2 months with difficulty. I want control of my actions. Why? I feel childish. I feel peevish. Physically, I will stay safe, but emotionally, I fight the social control. Now, I'm a Quaker that was raised in Maryland, kind of a fragrant Southern belle with magnolia trees. But I converted myself onto the New England soil, like a Yankee clipper ship with a stiff upper lip during the rough seas. So I ask Spirit, how am I to surrender in this time? Help, I ask. Angels, help me. April 4th. I need new centering tools. I can't force myself. So I pray with new tools like Rex Ambler's Experiments in the Light. In this practice of praying, Ambler asks us to form a specific query. So here goes. Will I break the social code when someone is sick and needs me at their side changing the bedpans? So in an epidemic, confining myself is surely protection for all of us. But would God require that I break this social code we've established? For instance, I don't like being a war tax resistor. I feel that God asks me every paycheck not to break this human law. I do not pay taxes that feed into the war machine. We may never know God's will in times of COVID. So I ask my feet, please be guided when I walk in the dark. Our path is unknown, but still I ask, can I receive guidance? So in my journal writings, you'll see how I grasp for the qualities that I'm using to beat back the evil that I sense around me. Maybe it's just fear. But some of those qualities are gratitude, the presence of goodness that I call angels, and courage. So we need these tools. Centering. If centering doesn't work, I try this litany of love, a litany that may be the mantra that you've heard before. Give over your own willing. Pennington saying, give over, give over. So we're taught as friends to be silent, but in times of trouble, don't worry about saying these words out loud. Like with my spouse, we will sing, because every little thing is gonna be all right. Baby, don't worry about a thing. So this is also a very strange new Quaker practice, which is called communion while Zooming, this wizardry called Zooming. So Quakers don't have specific times of communion. I'm dealing with a gust of wind right now. Quakers don't even have a trinity exactly. But we don't need to throw out the trinity and the communion. We can still have that action. So one of my aspects that help me is looking at this faith that came from the Christian tradition of Trinity. And if you have a marker beside you and some paper, you might want to write some things down like I found, that one of the ways that I orient myself in these crisis times is, you know, traditional Christianity, they had, I hope you can see this, Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. But those words don't work for me, nor does the hierarchy in Christianity work for me. So as a Quaker, I took the practice of using unique experiences of God. Some people see the inner light as seed, or as the word, or as a light in darkness. And so for me, I took, well, what is my Trinity? And so awe is the first motion that I have in this universe. And then I wanted to include, well, what is all around me that is leading me towards that spirit of awe and love? And that's beauty. And then the third aspect is what rises up in me, which is some joy that I contribute in the form of song or something else. So write down a triangle, and what are your 3 principles that lead you on your path? Just be original. No right or wrong. We're living in a new reality beyond that of right and wrong. So thanks for that experiment. I do want to say that we have a faith that is not passive, even though it looks like in silent worship that we are being passive. Centering is a very active engagement. And I want to move into one of my precepts up until last year is that I've said to myself, well, if I'm encountering evil, expect there to be grace. But in 2019, I went to the southern border and I worked at Tijuana in a large building called the Caracol in Espanol. And it was just 3 blocks from the border, from the port of entry, from the wall. I stayed there a few weeks and it was hard work volunteering there. In Spanish, I spent days listening to trauma stories from the refugees that had traveled overland to try to enter the United States. So any day of my stay there, there were about 25 volunteers working in this large building, and there would be 60 refugees that would roll in every afternoon. And I thank God that there was enough of us volunteers. I was very grateful that I had volunteers so I wasn't so alone there. I had my Trinity, I had mantras and a spiritual practice. Because the very first day I got there, Luis, our human rights director of the volunteers, said, we aren't providing enough here. I'm going to train everyone here to prepare our guests, that's what he called the refugees, our guests for their credible hearing when they ask for asylum from Homeland Security. But the agency here doesn't run on money or knowledge. It mostly runs on love. So my work there was part charity and part communion and totally spiritual. So being at the wall is a division, the separation of people being blocked from loving and sharing is evil. And a lot of my life work is, one, being a therapist and a healer, but also being a practitioner of nonviolence. So how do we work as Quakers to explain the steps of what Jesus asked us to do, is loving our enemy? Well, I went there hoping for grace. I met Eduardo, who had participated in a lot of violence in his family from Honduras. I met people who were raped. I met children who had been pulled away from gangs. And all of these people who had been so exposed to violence acted very kindly in our shelter called El Caracol. And so my role, well, yeah, we prepared lots of peanut butter sandwiches, and I listened to the stories and I helped them write down the facts so that they could have as many specific facts for their trial in front of Homeland Security. And I met Jocelyn, and I saw that Jocelyn was willing to hold Eduardo's sick child while he went to see the doctor. I learned how they could give to each other. Sometimes Eduardo would let Maria, who was pregnant, up to the front of the line so that she could go first before the line of other guests waiting for service. So I learned from them that they were giving all of what they had. Me, I was just giving from the excess. So I'm hoping to, as we stop this part of our worship together, that we recognize that in all of this crisis, there is a stronger reality, which is the heaven that is here on earth, that we live in this time of heaven on earth, not the time of walls and falsehoods and the fear, that we need to cling to the promise that heaven is here to guide us, and that we have these unique Quaker tools of centeredness, reciprocity, courage. These are tools that the world doesn't live by that Quakers can offer. And I know from my experience that we can transform crisis so that love rules. Thanks.